Today, I've got a brand new monitor from BenQ, and I think it's the best thing I've used for both photo and video editing. I'm going to talk about why I chose this particular one and what I think is so awesome about it. Well, hey everyone, Hudson here. Welcome to this week's video. Fun stuff. We're going to talk monitors. It's actually a video I've been excited to do for a while and a change I've needed to make for a little while. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to link a bunch of interesting stuff, show you what I absolutely love about this new monitor. It's a BenQ SW321C and it's truly amazing. Before we jump in and do that though, I want to talk a little bit, make sure everyone knows that we have an office hour, one of those big free photography get-together group meetings and Q&A sessions. This May 24th, 10 a.m. Pacific. You can sign up at hudsonhenry.com/office hours and join us via either YouTube Live or Zoom. And we're going to talk about travel and traveling with gear. We'll tell some fun stories and anecdotes, some horror stories, give some tips, give some tricks. Take your questions, and it can be questions about anything photographic, but if you've got some about travel and about traveling with gear, those are awesome because that's what we're going to be talking about. Shortly thereafter, David and Archer and I are taking off for Costa Rica for a workshop that I've been looking forward to for years now. We're getting there. We got a great crew going with us, and it's going to be a ton of fun. So sign up for those office hours, join us, submit your questions, hudsonhenry.com/office hours, and I really hope to see you there. So I'm going to talk a bit about this monitor. I'm going to talk about what comes with it, how it works, what its connectivity is. It's a newer monitor from BenQ made specifically for photographers and video editors. And it's amazing. You know, let's face it, we spend more time sitting in front of our screens than we ever do out shooting. And it's that window to working with your photos and your video that really leads to how good is the output. It's only as good as the screen that you're editing it on and color grading it on. And this one is better than any that I've used before, and I'll talk about why. Along the way, you know, I'm gonna be talking about the monitor arms that I use for my dual display setup. I'll talk just a little bit about the secondary display that I've got. This awesome light that's also by BenQ, which initially kind of established a relationship with me working with them, reviewing their products. And you know, all that stuff is at my website at hudsonhenry.com/ATS links, along with all the other gear that I use, recommend, and swear by. And when you use those links, it helps me out, and I really, really appreciate it. There's also links to the stuff that I'm talking about in this video in its full description, along with a chaptered out, time-coded table of contents where you can just jump around and click to any part of this video that you want to watch or rewatch really, really easily. Okay, so why did I get this new monitor? Well, a big reason is the fact that I get a ton of questions from people about, what do you recommend for a photo editing monitor? I'm not very happy with mine. I want a bigger one. Mine is not very uniform across the screen. I don't think that my monitor is displaying colors well. And you know, for years and years, I recommended NEC's SpectraView monitors. They have built-in programmable LUTs. They were easy and wonderful to calibrate. But they've discontinued all of the ones that I liked, and they were big, they were bulky, they haven't quite evolved with the times. And you know, this is another one of those never say never moments. I said I wasn't going to ever go to a 4K display, but I've seen the light. And this is a 4K 32-inch display. It's replacing a standard definition 30-inch display that I've used for years. And I absolutely love it. You know, I talked a lot about the fact that with a 4K display, it's difficult to see the level of detail that you need because the pixels are so small with, you know, for editing your images. But in this case, it's a bigger screen. I can see the detail pretty well, and I can also zoom into 200% to check detail and make those pixels appear a little bit bigger on the screen. Sure, there's some interpolation, but it seems to be really accurate in the work that I've been doing. And I've been working with a lot of other photographers who are using or have used these monitors and love them. So this is a really cool display. It comes with some awesome accessories and hardware. Its stand is beautiful. I'm not using its stand. I'm using this dual monitor display that I got off Amazon, or dual display monitor arm system that I got off Amazon. That is really, really nice. It comes basically with sort of a 3.2 USB hub system. I'm running my mic into a jack that's built into it. It's got adjustable gas arms that raise and lower and let me tilt and swivel, and it's really, really sweet. I'm going to put a link to that in this video's description too. But the monitor arm that comes with this BenQ display is also beautiful. It has this cool control puck that we'll talk about in a little bit that lets you access custom calibrations or canned calibrations and monitor settings, and even act as volume control and mute buttons. It's pretty darn cool. And it also comes with a really beautiful hood. So actually, let me show you how cool the hood is. I'll do a little GoPro video of it. So for those who like to work with a hood on their monitor, if you're in a space where you really have a difficult time controlling the light, this is about as nice a one as I've seen. It's beautiful, felt lined, soft on the inside. Comes in multiple pieces that are really easy and well marked to put together. You got a slot to drop your colorimeter through for doing your calibration through the top. Just a really well made, solid, easy to put together hood that comes in its own little box inside the bigger box, so you can keep it on the shelf if you want. For me, because I work with dual monitors, it just obstructs the second monitor too much for me. And here I am in the studio where I can really easily, control the lighting and just dim this section of the studio when I'm working on images. But again, if you're a person who's working with a single monitor and has a harder time controlling the light, it's a beautiful hood, and it comes with some extra parts too, so that if you're in the vertical orientation, portrait mode, it can hood it in portrait mode too. It's pretty darn cool. All right, so you can see it's a pretty cool hood. However, the fact that I use this 4K webcam and the secondary monitor kind of makes the hood a tricky beast to work with. If you're working in a room where you really can't control the light, you got a skylight beaming down on your workstation or windows that aren't shaded completely, the hood can be a really, really great thing. And I love the fact it has that little calibration window that drops in. This monitor has some really cool connectivity options. And it's, I started out talking about the fact that this is the SW321C. They also make an SW271C. It's a 27-inch version of this. It's $400 cheaper, as well as an SW270C, which has a lot of the same features, but is standard definition, about half the resolution. It's a 2K instead of 4K, and it's significantly cheaper. It's $800. This display is $2,000. It's not cheap, but it's a precision piece of equipment. It has some pretty insane connectivity too, from a really nice fast SD card slot to USB 3.1 ports to a USB-C Thunderbolt port with power delivery. Let me actually walk around back and I'll show you some of the connectivity on this monitor. All right, so looking around back of this monitor, one of the really cool things about it is its connectivity options. So, aside from its normal sort of power in jack here, you've got a service port for doing firmware updates. You've got the little puck port, that wheel that you put on your desk as a control device. You got two HDMI inputs, a DisplayPort 1.4 input. You got USB-C that can drive the monitor's video as well as bringing data in. Right now I'm just bringing data in through that USB-C port and driving this monitor from my NVIDIA card via the DisplayPort. You've got a standard sort of RCA jack for audio. It can be headphones, can be speakers for your system coming out right there, as well as another USB-C input that you can bring in from a fast port on your computer, so USB 3 can come in right there, or like I've done, via USB-C. Then as you come up and around, you've got this whole little input thing here on the side. It would be to your left as you're sitting looking at the monitor, on the monitor's back right. You've got two fast USB 3 ports. Right now I have my 4K webcam connected in via that, but you could also connect in other things, like say a colorimeter as you're doing calibration, and there's an SD card slot right there too. Oh, I'm shadowing it a little bit, but if I slip by the light, you got an SD card slot right there, which is, can be really handy. Another fast card reader for those of you using SD cards. So, really nice modern connectivity. It's cool putting everything into your monitor because you can bring it down either through that nice cable routing in the included BenQ stand, or through your monitor arms if you're doing a setup like me, and just sort of everything is hidden for a clutter-free desk as it drops down to your system. All right, so all that, comes in this big, huge, really nicely made box with this monitor that when you open up, comes with Pantone color calibration certification, that it's all beautifully calibrated out of the factory. And it comes with all the cables you might possibly need to use with this monitor. Everything just feels really nice pulling it out of the box. When I got it set up, mounted it, turned it on, I was just a little bit floored, I'll be honest. I wish I could, have everyone step into my studio and look at this screen, but just the image I've chosen as my desktop, the fact that I can see more definition, it just has a deeper dynamic range than I'm used to working with a monitor. The specs on this thing are 100% Adobe 100% sRGB, 99% Adobe RGB, and Rec 709 for the video folks. And it also does 95% of P3 color. That's a pretty intense color palette. It's a 10-bit, IPS monitor. It really has a beautiful image that is uniform from the absolute corner to the absolute corner in a way that I'm unused to. And it's smaller and lighter. It's not a small, light monitor, but it's smaller and lighter than the 30-inch monitor that it's replacing, and it's slightly larger. And I like the fact that it's a 4K 16:9 aspect ratio. That's nice just for the type of video editing that I do a lot of. It really helps me make sure that it's looking right when I'm doing it. I've just found that working on images with this, it gives me a little deeper view into what's actually there in the image. We're always a little bit limited by our monitors because of the fact that our cameras have more dynamic range and more color depth than the monitors that we tend to edit the images that they capture on. And this is just giving me a little bit more window into what's actually in the files that I'm working on. It's a beautiful, beautiful screen. You've just got to kind of trust someone who's been working on screens for the last 25 years a lot, that this one is special and really nice, and I couldn't be happier than to be spending hours working on it. My friend Rick LePage, who's been working on images forever too, has the 27-inch version in his office, loves it. He was one of the ones that sort of convinced me to reach out to BenQ about reviewing and testing this monitor. And wow, I just have no hesitation about recommending this line of photographers' monitors to you from them. They're doing a fantastic, fantastic job. So, last to just talk about, kind of cap this thing off, is this little puck. I talked about the fact that I reviewed this desk light that they make that mounts up on top of a monitor, and it tilts out in a way and is flagged in a way that it doesn't really throw any light on the screen that it's set on top of, and yet it lights your desk area. So if you want to work in a darkened studio-like environment with your images without, but still see your desk without affecting the screen, it's a really amazing tool, and you can balance the color, temperature, and control the intensity with this little puck. Well, the photographer's monitors come with a similar puck, and if you use the stand that comes with the monitor, it mounts right in the middle of the foot of the stand, and it does some cool things. It accesses all of your monitor's control settings with sort of an old iPad or iPod style push button and dial to run through the menus. So, if you want to go in and do manual color adjustments, you just click, and then there's a back arrow. You can come out of the menu with a back arrow. It also has a customizable set of buttons on it. So right now I have my custom calibration 1 set on the 1 button. I have black and white set on the 2 button. I have sRGB if I want to preview what an image is going to look like on a normal monitor on the web that's not an Adobe RGB monitor. Well, how would it look to somebody on the typical website? I can just hit that 3 button and boom, it's showing it to me in sRGB. Come back to my custom calibration mode 1, and it has multiple custom calibration modes. I'll show you how all that works. All that you can just set up in the monitor. If you're using the monitor's audio jack in the back, you can control volume with the knob by default. You can also mute or unmute with this button in the back. Kind of a neat little deal. And that's all programmable. As you come in here, there's a bunch of things that you can do. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. You can come down and and change what the control keys are doing. As you can see, you can just go through and change all those settings really easily. The other thing that's great about this monitor is its built-in programmable LUTs for calibration. And despite the fact that I pulled this monitor, opened the box, and saw big certificate that it's been calibrated right out of the box, and it's got these calibration modes like Adobe RGB and Rec 709 for the video editors, and sRGB and blah, P3, all those different settings you can just go in and tap, and they've certified that they're calibrated well. I recommend doing your own custom calibration, and I recommend turning your luminance down. I think one of the things I see more often than not as a mistake with photographers is that they're editing their images on screens that are too bright. Even if they're a great quality screen like this, if you edit your screen set to 120 luminance, that's the technical term is 120 candelas per square meter, but a lot of times it just has 120, 90, 80, 100. They go up to 200 candelas per square meter. What happens is you're editing on a really bright screen, and those of us who work in a color managed world where we're printing and sending things off for publication tend to work at between 80 and 100 candelas per square meter. When I look at your image that's edited on a really bright screen, it looks super dark to me. The shadows look really dark. I also get people telling me my prints look so dark, and generally the answer is calibrate your monitor at a lower brightness setting. So I'll show you. I'm going to shut down for a second, grab my my X-Rite i1 Display Pro colorimeter, plug it in, tilt this monitor, get it mounted in there, and I'll show you how easy it is to calibrate this monitor. It's just as simple as setting what parameters you want, clicking start, and it does it all itself. All right, so I've done everything save one thing that I would do before I'd set up to calibrate this display, or any display really. I've tilted it so that my calibration puck, this is an X-Rite i1 Display Pro, and I've got a link to that in my video's description. It's the colorimeter I've been using for years. I tilt the screen so that it sits nice and flat and gravity kind of holds it in place on the screen. I've got it plugged in to a USB port. I'm using the one that comes with this monitor stand. And I fire up the software. The thing I'm not doing is dimming the lights to exactly how I would edit for color critical workflow. When I'm editing, I make sure there's no lights directly hitting this monitor. It'd be a pretty crummy video if I shut down all the lights. You'd be looking at like a silhouette of me in front of a glowing screen. So we're not going to go ahead and do that. And I probably won't follow through with hitting the button to start the measurement, but I'll show you the setup and just how simple it is. So you jump in here to BenQ's included software, which is called Palette Master Element. And when it loads up, it's going to take a second, look through the USB connection, say, oh, I'm dealing with an SW321C. I've got an X-Rite i1 Display Pro Plus plugged into me. I'm going to choose that I want advanced settings. I hit start. You can either validate that your profile is still good, or you can profile your monitor. I'm going to go ahead and profile, and you have some settings. So, the default is a photographer's mode. You're going to be in Adobe RGB. If there were a pro RGB setting, I would go with that, but there's not. So Adobe RGB is the widest gamut color space for working with your images, your master files and editing that you can get. That's what I would argue you should do. The D65 white point, that's just a 6500 white point. That's sort of the industry standard. I'd go with D65. There are other choices. I'd say stick with D65. The primaries are Adobe RGB. Your luminance, there you go. We don't want 120. You want 80. We're going to set it down lower at 80. Gamma of 2.2. That's just sort of a mid-tone, midpoint. That's kind of, again, the industry standard. How do the tones lay out on a curve? And then the black point, I like to put at absolute 0. Now, all I essentially have to do after that is click Start Measurement right here. I'm just going to stick with, you can choose. There are 3 separate calibrations here that you can see. Calibration 1, Calibration 2, Calibration 3. Those are settings that you can activate through your monitor. So if you wanted to calibrate this monitor 3 different ways, you could save it as Calibration 1, Calibration 2, Calibration 3, take a note, and flip through with your little custom control puck which one you're viewing. Like I showed you, I had sRGB, black and white, and my custom 1 color calibration. Custom 1 is the one I created the exact same way that we're working with right here at 80 candelas per square meter, that 80 luminance. All I'd have to do is click start measurement, and unlike a lesser monitor that doesn't have built-in programmable LUTs, it's not going to sit with the colorimeter on a white patch and have you adjust the on-screen controls to get the luminance set to 80 while it's measuring, and then it tells you to wait for it to reset and check, and you might need to turn up and down. It doesn't have you go through that with contrast, doesn't have you adjust the red, green, and blue channel intensities. It's going to do all of that for you. All you do is click start measurement, go off, have a cup of coffee, come back, and you click accept measurement. It's going to tell you everything went well. It's going to display a whole bunch of little color patches under this colorimeter. Read them, see what the actual output of the monitor is, and build a color profile for you that is tailored to this particular monitor and your particular specifications. So that's how easy it is. Click start. It's cool stuff. I've been used to that with my NEC SpectraView monitors for a while. This software is even just a little bit simpler. One more fun little piece of software that this monitor comes with and that it's built to work with its control settings is Paper Color Sync by BenQ, which is pretty fun stuff for those of us who love to print. It's not software that myself, as a person who prints out of Adobe Lightroom and ON1 Photo RAW that both have built-in soft proofing calibration, that I would tend to use that much, but it's a real easy way to get a look at what your print is likely to look like on the paper that you're going to use and the printer that you're going to use. So you have to make sure that you have the color profile downloaded for the paper and printer that you're using. Usually it comes from your paper manufacturer, and you would get the profile for your particular printer. So in my case, if I were using Epson Exhibition fiber paper, I would go and download the profile for the Epson 9900 printer that I keep here in the corner. And then I would activate this Paper Color Sync software, and I'd use the Advanced tab, and all I'd have to do is select an image that's going to determine what color space the image is in. It probably would be ProPhoto RGB if it were one of my master editing files. If it's a JPEG that you're bringing up, it's probably going to be sRGB color space. You would select that photo, you'd select which printer you're using, you'd select which paper you're using, and blammo, the software will just activate the Paper Color Sync profile on the monitor and give you a preview of what ink is going to look like on that paper. That ink on that paper with your particular image. And then you can go in and edit. It'll actually ask you what software you want to look at it in. It'll just keep that profile active until you go in and switch and say, no, I want to go back to black and white or back to my Calibration 1 profile. Bops you right out of it. Now you can do that same thing in Adobe Lightroom, and the thing that I love in Lightroom is I can activate it and then do a before and after, and I can look at my edited image, not soft proofed with the paper profile that I'm using, right next to it proofed with the paper profile that I'm using. So that's another way of doing the same thing. Soft proofing on a color calibrated display that's adjusted to the correct lower luminance setting. I like to use 80. After years and years of printing, 80 candelas per square meter is where I go to get accurate looking prints and images that look great across the spectrum when I send them out for use, whether it's on social media or sharing over email or printing or sending for publication. That's just what works best for me. So that's another cool little thing. Before I sign off about this monitor, I know there's a couple questions I can hear people asking. As I said, this arm solution, these are a new set of arms that I got along with this monitor. They're not terribly expensive. I think they were under $180. They have sort of 2 clamps up underneath. They're rock solid, and they pass through USB 3.2 high-speed connections with cables that are included that you can just mount into the back of your computer, and it makes a nice clean desk. There's nice internal cable routing in them. And the monitor that I have off to the side is a Dell Ultra Sharp display. It's a 24-inch display. And I think a 24-inch 16:9 monitor works out really nicely next to this 32-inch monitor. If you get too big and too long, it can get a little awkward. I like the vertical because when I'm working in Photoshop, I'll have panels with layers and sometimes tons of layers doing a panorama or a focus stack. And I can just have all of those cascading out along with all my tools. If I'm doing video editing, much the same. I'll have a big, bunch of my bins and files and tools and things off to the side here while I have a bigger display of the video that I'm editing on the color critical screen. I don't know that you need 2 color critical screens. I think the Dell Ultra Sharp displays are wonderful for photo and video editing in general if you're on a budget. And I'm putting a link to this display, the latest Dell Ultra Sharp display that I'm using. They're just a fantastic monitor. Not obviously in the same league as this BenQ for really color critical print proofing and HDR style video editing, all the things that this bigger 10-bit full 100% sRGB monitor is capable of. But these are great. And as a second monitor, what I tend to do is browse the web. I can have a nice long web page where I have to scroll less on the left side. Again, all those tools that I use and apps where the color critical image or video is on the right side that I'm working on. If you have the resources, having 2 of these displays, they're guaranteed to match. That's part of the whole deal with them being so tightly quality controlled and certified. But again, I get pretty close doing the on-screen control calibrations with this using X-Rite software that comes with the i1 Display Pro colorimeter we used a little bit ago. The other question I hear people asking, again, I mentioned it earlier, this SW321C is $2,000. It's not a cheap monitor, but it's less expensive than any other monitor that I know of with all the same capabilities, features, and specifications. And its connectivity is perfect. It's really, really nice. It helps unclutter your desk by having all the connections right up there to kind of have hidden behind your monitor. Again, they make an SW271C that's a 27-inch version, just a little bit smaller. It's $400 cheaper at $1,600, also 4K. If you don't care about 4K, and I don't know that you absolutely need to, and you're looking for a lot of the same specifications, it's even got that USB-C Thunderbolt 3 power delivery port. It's got the same RGB capabilities, display, color depth, and dynamic range. The SW270C is a pretty nice bargain at $800. Still not a cheap monitor, not 4K, but a more affordable version if somebody's kind of on the in-between. I can't say enough about how much I love this monitor. When I got it, calibrated it, started working with it, I just immediately started sending smiley faces and "God, I love this monitor" messages back to them. There were no negative things that I found to say about it. No, just really none. I mean, there's no way for me to really work with a hood with the dual monitors set up the way that I like to work because it just obscures the second monitor. Their hood is fantastic. I guess the only thing I could comment on is if they could figure out a way that would make it easy to mount most of the, to have some kind of a mount for webcams on the hood for people that are using the hood. Super minor. More importantly, they opened that window to calibrate the monitor without taking the hood off. That's super cool, having that little closing trapdoor. So it's a great, great monitor. If you choose to grab one or you have questions about it, hit me up. And they're always at my links, hudsonharrier.com/ATS links. I hope that you'll join us in the office hours, May 24th, 10 a.m. Pacific. We're talking about traveling with gear. We're telling some fun stories. We've got some horror stories in the group. We've got some really well-learned lessons from along the way. We've got some tips, we've got some tricks, and we'll take your questions. They don't have to be travel related. Anything photographic is fair game. But it's gonna be fun. And then I'm flying off to Costa Rica. I can't wait. So, all right, everybody, I hope that you're all having fun, enjoying some sunshine. We've had just a hard bout of rainy weather here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's a little bit sunny this afternoon. My 800 lens is on the truck for delivery, the 800 6.3S lens. And I think I'm gonna go hit the wildlife refuge and take some pictures. I hope you're staying safe, having fun, and being creative. And we'll see you next week.